Hello, everyone. We are super glad to see you here today and welcome. I hope you really enjoy this live. I am very excited for it. My name's Leah Fink with All Thrive, and I'm thrilled that you guys are going to get to meet my guest today. I think she's going to give you some great things to think about and use in your own business. This is Veronica Palin. She owns Cold Calling Co. She has been doing this for over 25 years, and it's a business-to-business cold calling company. So if anyone needs to know about communication, it is certainly Veronica, and this is her background as well. She has a BA in English. She's studied other languages, I believe a minor in French as well, and in business. And clearly linguistics is a passion. And so talking today, we're getting to learn and get to benefit from her knowledge about how communication is so important and how we can really use it to connect with clients. We called this intimacy in business relationships because intimacy might seem as a racier word that people see it like that, but it really is about closeness. And when you're connecting with a client, when you're connecting with your coworkers, it's so important to actually be able to develop that close bond pretty quickly sometimes, right? And like for cold calling, Veronica, I'm sure you have to be able to develop a bond so quickly that you can meet someone and instantly be able to connect with them so they don't just hang up on you. So she's going to be able to share some great tips with that today. So once again, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite, and very excited to connect with you. I know that, for people to trust us quickly is always the challenge, right? So there's first impressions based on whatever is presented. So with a phone call, what we have is tone and language choice. And so, tone is its own issue. So, a lot of times I'll say, make sure you're smiling so you sound better, that there's just that preparedness in the speed of the conversation to match the pace. But I wanted to talk more about the language with you. And I know that, with your background, with the different psychologies, different people operate in different ways. Often they give us those clues with language. So in calling someone and saying, hi, I'm calling from this company and we do this, they say, I don't see a need for that right now, might be an objection. And so when we can respond in a way that speaks to vision, so, if I can give more insight into, what our solution might be for you, can we have some time either now or later to discuss it? So this kind of mimicry might sound arbitrary or silly or made fun of, but that's not the case. It makes people feel heard. Now, I did that one a little bit on the fly, but sometimes if we say, I've got the I hear what you're saying. I sense, if someone says I don't get a sense of it, then you can say, I feel you, or perhaps I haven't given enough information. That's on me. What can we do to give you a better sense of it? That kind of thing. So. With all of the, the vision, the tactile, most people are usually in their heads. So they'll say, I don't think so, and so, I can, say a rebuttal or, if I understand you correctly, there's maybe not enough information to go on. So I've addressed the fact that it's about them not knowing and they want to know more in order to be able to make a decision. So those are some of the ways we can use language to mimic, and people will feel heard.
Yeah. Well, that, when we were having our conversation before, that was what really interested me. And I thought it was a cool place where our businesses overlapped, is this idea that, I think everyone thinks they're slightly better listeners than they are. And I think it's an active skill we all need to practice. Right. And hearing you being able to reflect that mimicry, people very quickly will tell you what's important to them. And I think that's what you're speaking to, right? Maybe they're in their head because they're in a thinking point in their business. Maybe they're in their feelings because whatever they're sensing, and like you said, feeling and sensing. And I also, most of my conversations, hopefully are a bit on the longer side when I'm talking about my business. And I have talked about this before, but I love using personality types. Because people also give cues, not just maybe with those couple words, which you're even faster at picking up, I'm sure, than I am with all your practice, but also the topics they bring up quickly. And I think about people that ask how you're doing, or how was your weekend, or have you noticed this weather? That's a pretty big cue for me too, of how you interact with them. If you're going to engage and talk about who you are a little bit, I think that also builds intimacy quickly. Whereas if you have someone who is talking very much about information, who are you, why are you calling, then I would go to information first. And it's interesting.
And that's a great point. Yeah. I mean, I am more direct, so I enjoy being direct quickly. However, if someone says, gee, how is your day going? I know now they want to talk a little bit. Yeah. Or they may not know how to get to the point, but want to. So that's my first discernment, is which one do they want? So I might ask them, how much time do you have? You know, do you want to talk a bit? Or just answer that question. Gee, you know, I enjoyed my coffee today. How about yours? And it, you know, and maybe they want to lead. So it might be a number of factors. So the more I can adjust to my audience, well, the more audiences I'll have who will be relatable, more opportunities that I have. I mean, a lot of miscommunication is about not understanding, not speaking the same language. So, you know, if I'm calling New York or Toronto, I better be really fast and you know, talk like, come on, let's go, because their speech is faster. You know, I don't know if I would say the same thing for West Coast, like, you know, California, Vancouver. However, there is a slight slower to that speech. So keeping up the pace of the person I'm speaking with is really important too, or else they might feel pressure, or they might feel I'm not keeping up. So I would say word choice, intention of the call, and you know, following how, like, it's like a dance with them on the phone, right? So volume, the volume of your voice. Are you talking too loud, too quiet? You know, and definitely less of a monologue and more of a dialogue. So every so often, you know, ask a question, see where they're at, check in, particularly with time. So I know you and I were talking about how, well, language isn't perfect. So I have a linguistics background. So in English, we use to be a lot. I am, you are, you know, he is, happy, sad, you know, fill in the blanks here. So in German, they say make, I make. That's their main verb. And in French, it's have, you know, so I have happiness, I have. So our language determines some of the limitations. So we are not always are, you know. Sometimes we have feel, but we say are. So we have to be a little bit more relaxed with the range that language can give us. And in that way, I'd say trusting the intention of what someone's saying, whether they're saying, how are you? What do they really mean? So we give it enough chance to sort of find out. And same thing when we ask them for something. So if I say, I'd like to meet with you because I've got something, I wouldn't call you about it if I didn't think it was really important. Now might not be a good time, but can we do it next week? What is it about? Well, do you have 2 minutes now for me to go over that? Sure. So, you know, we've had this dialogue, permission for me to present just enough to say, you know, I've got a possible solution. I've helped companies like yours. I don't want to go over it all now because I respect your time. Can I send you an email and can we do, you know, a meeting tomorrow at 4? Does that work for you? So if then they will give some kind of response. I'm not sure yet, right? Or sounds good, but I'm really busy. How about next week? You know, so I think a person will not say no to something that they might get value from. So the intention is to try and show enough value from your character and your care and concern that you might be providing a solution to them and not trying to sell them something. And really getting over oneself in the call of being nervous about it. Because, you know, on any given day, someone might say no or yes to the exact same pitch. It's really circumstantial. Every moment's a different moment. So it's not really about how good the pitch was or what, you know, mood they're in. People have the right of saying yes or no anytime. So, you know, I
think that's so many people's challenge with cold calling. I can't say it's my favorite either, is that piece of rejection. But I love the way that you just structured that. So, you know, you have your introduction. What I hear, which is, I think the most important thing, is you're being very responsive to them. And so you are, you know, listening for cues and then adjusting your behavior, not just doing what's most natural for you. There's a big piece of respect that you're doing those check-in questions. And then you have a very clear ask at the end too, which I think is really important. Would you want to talk a little bit more about kind of that next step, that ask piece?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. And I do want to go back to the idea of why it's business intimacy. It's I care about them. I do want to know whether or not they're a match for me. So that integrity of the call, especially with COVID, did a lot more sales calls prior to COVID. And now it's more not that, are you okay? But, let's say issues around their staff. There's a lot of business owners who are very lonely, or they don't know who to talk with about their staffing, their cash flow. Are they getting receivables? And instead we have this one line that says, are you pivoting well? So, the more one can be original with that question and just go, has that worked okay with your family? And then there's this other end of people being profitable during COVID and feeling shame or not wanting to celebrate that, So the more we can be authentic about that in the engagement of whatever our product or service is, the more this trust can start. If we really do care to know that about, the other business. So some of the ways that I ask for this call to action or a close is kind of trial closes. So, the big famous one of, do you have a sec or do you have a minute? Is now an okay time to talk? So, if I've called you and I've said, Leah, I really want to talk with you. I just want to know if now's a good time. And, the effectiveness of pausing. And they can say, depends what it is, so I'm trying to think of some other ways that I've closed. So again, if I ask for a meeting, if not now, then a 20-minute video, like a Zoom meeting. So we'll have more time for display. And in that, we will do this. How does that sound? Does that feel like something you might want to do? Would that help explain it? So I've just said it in the mind way, the feeling way, and the auditory way. I would only use the one that I thought might work with them. But I think I just find that the mimicry is a tough one to do at the beginning. It feels silly, but the truth is we do feel understood when people use similar language to us. So those are some of the sort of trial closes that I use with people. How about yourself? Like, what have you learned with your colors workshop and talking with different personalities?
Yeah. Well, first, I really do want to highlight, how much, when you say it feels awkward at first, how much it is a practice. I'm sure you didn't just pick up the phone and have mimicry every time and remember, oh, did this person say feeling? And it was just automatic. It's something that you have to practice and practice. And the more I've done communication workshops with people, I think the more I've realized in general how hard it can be for people to step outside of their experience. So that is one of the reasons I like True Colors, is it gives people a view of different personality types and how each of those types feels naturally or senses naturally or hears naturally and how to speak with them. Because it is very easy. I'm naturally a thinking person. 90% of the time, if you started a conversation and said, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of information, I'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Throw it at me. Whereas I know that's not a style that works for a lot of people. So I have had to be very cautious or aware when I do my work, when I approach someone, that I can get those keywords. So I would break it down into 4 categories for myself. The first is I'm listening for people that are asking about your day, that are starting the conversation from a very relational place. And to me,
tell me more about that. When they say that, what do they mean? How is that not generic? I just want to understand.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll give an example from a place I worked before, and I did a training with the staff team. One of the managers in the company never said goodbye on phone calls. Right. You'd finish, you'd have your conversation, the topic, and click. And to her, that was a piece of respect because she didn't want to use up any more of your time. And to a lot of the other people in the office that were the people that would say, hey, how was your weekend? How are you doing? They were like, that was horrible. That was emotionally scarring to me. And actually, some people do not naturally want to say, how's your day going? Or if they do, because it's such a natural habit, you'll notice, how are you doing? Oh, good. How about you? Good. It's a very quick close because they're not actually interested first in the relationship. They first want to know why you're doing this. What is the purpose of this talk?
Sometimes when people have asked that question to me, I've asked them a question to qualify. Do you have time for the answer? Would you really like to know, or do you want to keep going to the next point? Like, I actually ask them. And they go, well, no, we can go on. So it gives them an option of, do you want me to answer your question or not?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's super important that you're seeking that feedback constantly, right? The piece I think that is really interesting with the work you do is you have to get a read so quickly. So you have to base some of it on assumptions. So it's really helpful to know these tips and tricks because they're ways that you can assume more accurately is essentially what it is. But obviously the best thing you can do is to check in with someone and say, did that work for you? I mean, I have whole workshops on feedback, helping people understand what are you basing your assumptions off of and how do you actually clarify or don't clarify. I mean, the classic example is bosses that would say they're doing everything great and their employees under them are going, I'm not going to tell them all the things they're not doing.
It's like a parent. I'm a great parent. Why don't you let your kids choose that? Why don't they tell you, because they get to be the ones saying.
Yeah. And it's super daunting in that stage to just go up to a parent and say, well, maybe not as a teenager. It can be a little easier. Yeah. But that can be a whole piece there. So yeah, I guess my piece is when I think about it for a work purpose, I'm listening for these cues so I can make a generalized assumption. If I have a call, if I'm meeting someone for an hour on Zoom, you really do get a sense of their character. You get a sense of if it's better to approach them from that place of information.
And the truth is it gets easier with time. So the first call, the first 5, the first 10, after 100, and my team have a great sense of when to ask, is now a good time to talk? They don't say it every time. They can tell when someone has time. But if they hear, I don't know, cat in the background, a phone ringing, something else going on, or hear distraction, or hear frustration, or hear hurry up in the tone of a recipient, then they can have a range of things to respond with. So, one of the things we were talking about before going live was before presenting the full effects of what I do, I ask, would you like to hear more about what I'm calling about? And then they can choose yes or no. And if they say not really, good, can we set up another time? Is a better approach than me info dumping or value dumping or benefit dumping on you. So, I mean, one of the things we talked about was what are some of the things that create the lack or like destroy intimacy or, make it not happen. And so, me imposing all the values of what we do to you without your permission, consent of having the available time or wanting to listen, will stop that. Me attempting to have a meeting with you or prematurely before there's any assess or not hearing your no or your objection. So usually no is a subset of another objection. They might say, no, I'm not interested. And so the ability to go, I hear you and I respect that it's no, I'd really like to keep in touch with you so you can find us in the event that changes. So can I send something to you? Pause. Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, I might use you. I don't know. Great. Okay. What's your email address? And then there's more engagement. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have another minute. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? Sure. Well, because I want to send you emails that are relevant, not just, anything. And so, how often do you ever call people? And so I have this chance to ask permission to ask a couple more questions. And then, the right thing to do after that is to send them something specific to that within 24 hours. Yeah. And really not call back for another 3 days, 2 days, depending. So, I mean, years ago when I started, it was a phone call. You sent a fax. You did another phone call and you had a meeting, you're done. And then, some time ago, it was more 7 to 11 touches. So it was, phone, email again, maybe another phone call, voicemail, possibly even mail. That's quite effective now because it's not done as much. And so I don't know if it's even 7 to 11 touches. It might be more. But the idea is the more custom it can be at the beginning, the more you're finding out whether you even can help them, which is less about budget and more about, are they qualified? So you save your own time as well through that process. So I like it. I find it to be an art, what I do or what we do in communicating with people and getting a list of 1,000 people down to 100 people who fit the bill, who are interested and qualified, so that, salespeople can follow up on warm leads and close more. So that's essentially what I do. But on your end, tell me more how communicating with people effectively and getting intimacy helps your business or your clients.
Yeah. Well, I keep wanting to reflect on what you're saying because it's so great. And the piece that I really like, or I think would be a great lesson, something I've learned from you throughout all of our conversations is, entrepreneurs, especially, I think, hear a lot about, give value and share value. And like, you have a why. This is why you're driven to do this and what you're really passionate about. And I think people might have a hard time, or I know I did, connecting it sometimes to cold calling. Cold calling, I think people think of as an imposition, whereas what I like hearing from you is it's less of an imposition. You are actually offering value in a cold call.
I mean, anytime you share who you are,
yes,
authentically, you're adding value. So it reminds me of being up on a stage, and there's a nervousness of being in front of people for most people.
Yep.
But that means that audience can hear the message, and those who align with it will go, yeah, thank you for sharing. So this is just more one-on-one to do it.
Yeah.
Reminds me of group therapy versus one-on-one, right? You kind of can get more value in the one-on-one once that trust is established. I find that especially if we're talking about financial planners or benefits or that kind of thing, not everybody wants to, say, what they're doing with that, let alone change it. So, and a lot of business owners, part of why they're business owners is they're very good at what they do and possibly attached to that with their ego, and rightfully so. So anything changing from what their existing setup is can be a challenge. So having them, what your first discernment is who's open-minded. Who in the call are going to be people who are open-minded to some alternate solution or additional solution that helps them. So that's often what we're trying to discern when we talk with people. Do I align with them? Do I want to do business with them?
Yeah.
Because there's no need to go against the rail. Like if someone goes, you're a crap, I hate what you do. It's like, thank you, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Lots of people on the planet.
And I think what we're talking about today is, there's going to be those people that kind of never call me again, hang up the phone. And there's going to be those people that are really easy to connect with. Yeah. And there's like the biggest group is in the middle of that. And that's where you really have this power to be reflective, to be aware of your own habits. I mean, you asked about what I do, and that kind of is it in a nutshell, is if you can be more aware of yourself in many different ways, how you are in relationship, how you communicate, what's important to you, then you're able to move along continuums of that. If I know that information is really important to me, but I know that relationships are really important to you, I don't have to go to information. But if I'm not aware how important this is, I'm probably going to be subconsciously, maybe even ego-drivenly using this method, and I'm going to be blinded. Well, it's not even blinders more. I don't even realize it's out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So and we know that. We know we don't know what we don't know. Right. Yes. And that is the essence of a lot of the call too, is who we're calling doesn't know it's even available or as a solution. So their first thing is no, like I don't know, is really their no, usually. So I like to help people get through that so that, they match. They really do connect. Because here's these providers who can do this great thing for this person they bothered to call, who, on purpose, because they know it could help them. So I think, again, just trusting one's passion and knowing that you're not interrupting them. You do have something of value if we can just get through language, if we can just get through timing, if we can, and that's what we're really asking for in the call. Can I start this with you? Will you give me a shot? Because I've got something I think you can use, and I wouldn't call you otherwise, So, we kind of massage that in different points, but, and that's kind of what we try to do with relationships anyway, to have intimacy. I have a need, or I have something I can offer, let's see if it's a match.
Well, and can I align enough with you that it's worth it for us to build that intimacy, or that it feels safe enough for me to trust you to build that intimacy? And I agree, that's with every, I always think, personal, professional relationships, you're really the same patterns, just different types of people, right? And
Yeah.
The need to be able to look at those and to purposefully take steps that build that intimacy, I think is absolutely key. And that's why we wanted to talk about it today.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, a lot of things were done over handshakes. Huge trust relationship, right? So, not every business takes deposits for what they do. So you have to trust the person's going to pay. The person has to trust that the other person is going to do the work. So essentially there's trust in that. So yeah, it's critical to start the process and also to fess up where we lack, where we're not good at something, so that we can own up to that and they can know what to expect, because we're not perfect. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you doing this with me today. I hope that the people listening can, get something out of it. And I mean, there's a lot of small business people on LinkedIn, and, it's usually marketing's a struggle. Communication's a bit of a struggle. Even if they're great at it, they're not great every time with every person. So, it's nice to help with the challenge to, listen, see what others are like, and then more opportunities might exist for you, and maybe even one's own bias. Like, let's say I like dealing with businesses who are direct. So then when someone comes in who is a different style, I might go, but now that I know, oh, that style also is something I like working with. I wouldn't know that unless I tried, right? But I wouldn't want to, turn them off by my style before we even, came on. So there's always new things to learn. And I'm looking forward to going to your, True Colors workshop and reminded again of what, people's personalities are and what they need to be heard. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I love this conversation. I hope people really take this and do, use some of these points about building trust. Take the time, especially to reflect. And if you can, especially get some feedback, as Veronica mentioned, whether that's from the person in the call, someone else listening to how you speak and maybe giving you some outside impact. Because like you said, you don't know what you don't know. I think that's all super important. So I hope this has been really useful for everyone today. I certainly think it's been useful for me. And every time I've talked with you, Veronica, it's been so helpful on that cold calling front. So if anyone is looking for help with cold calling, either that they want to get it off their plate because they don't like it, or they want to know more about how they could do it better, Veronica is definitely an expert. I would recommend you should go check her out.
Thanks,
and just thank you so much.
I really wanted to see or hear people's comments. So if they comment on it, I'd like to hear what things they find works for them when people talk to them, or things they say or ask. Because these aren't tricks. These are just useful ways of connecting with people. So I'd like to hear what other people's are.
Excellent.
And so we can share best practices. So thank you, Leah.
Yeah. So hopefully people will put some comments in this, even after it's gone live. If you're watching it a little bit later, feel free to comment, and we would love to start that conversation.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.